What's up, internet? We got 3 minutes or so to talk about your shoulders, so let's do it quick. Okay, let's go over just the the basics, mechanics of your shoulder. What are some important muscles? What are some great exercises you can do? What are some things you can do when your shoulder's bothering you? Okay, so first things first. As we raise our shoulder up, 2/3 of the movement comes from here. 1/3 of the movement comes from that shoulder blade rotating for me. I always like to tell people your shoulder blade is the hip to the knee. Like so think of your shoulder blade like your hip. Your hip. Okay, let's look at our hip now. Our hip's got a lot of big ligaments, a lot of big muscles, a lot nice, good, deep ball socket. A lot of stability come from there. Your knee, not so much. So that's where, just like your shoulder gets a lot of help from these bigger muscles back here that help pivot off that shoulder. So as you raise up. So if I'm up here and those muscles of my shoulder blade aren't doing their job of help rotating that up there, then my shoulder's going to be working a lot harder. It's going to be working more than it has to. Okay, so what are some important muscles of your shoulder? Some important muscles of your shoulder are your rotator cuff. What's the rotator cuff do? The rotator cuff is made of 4 muscles: supraspinatus, infraspinatus, teres minor, and subscapularis. Their job is to keep that shoulder nice and compressed as we're up here. Our shoulder, lots of range of motion, 90, 80, 180, 60, 165, 165, 90, I don't know, a lot. So lots of mobility, not a lot of stability. And so a lot of times when people get shoulder issues, it's because they were doing something that requires that shoulder to provide more stability when that rotator cuff isn't used to working. So as we're up here, that rotator cuff, those rotator cuff muscle, that rotator cuff group is responsible for keeping that joint nice and compressed, that humeral head, so it's my humerus here, keeping it compressed into that ball and socket, that glenoid socket. So if those muscles aren't used to being up here, they're weak, we're going to run issues. And that's where a lot of times people get issues, either lifting something heavy, you need to catch yourself quick, times to where you're taking on more forces than your body's used to. So what's a great exercise for your shoulder? I like anything that is, I like working in the scaption plane. So Google that or whatnot. Scaption plane is, if this is 0, so straight outside 0. Scaption plane is about 30 degrees from that. Lifting in that direction. That's going to be working that the part of that rotator cuff called your supraspinatus. This is that true play of the shoulder in terms of if your shoulder was perfectly, if you're just sitting here, your shoulder is, the shoulder joint is facing that direction. So we're working on that rotator cuff, that supraspinatus, the best there. I like any other exercises that bring us open. So rows are wonderful. Pull-ups are the best. Anything that's opening our body up, laying our stomach, anything in this direction, because everything we do is forward. So let's do anything we can to open things up. Those are great exercises. A general rule of thumb for every one exercise you do for the chest or the mirror muscles, you got to do 2 for the back or even 3. So I'd like to see 3 for more to the back. Okay, so lastly, you injure your shoulder. Common injuries. It's tough with you injure your shoulder, let's do this. It's our bodies are so complex that you usually can't just break it down to one area, But a general rule of thumb, you injure your shoulder and it hurts to use it. Well, we want to get it moving more. Our bodies are made to move. So if we stop moving, we run into problems, especially our shoulder. Our body works in a way of that if I don't need to move it, I'm not going to. So a nice easy one to work on is just bend over, lean on your other arm, and just moving that forward. You can do circles here. You can do side to sides. And, even, so let me go forward here. And I'm getting all the way to that desk. So now let's stand up there. And now that's shoulder height. So this might be painful because I'm working against gravity. But here, gravity is not part of the picture. So now I'm able to move it with less tension and less force. Our ligaments, our bones, and our muscles like to be loaded with force. Let's make them do some work. And so if it's bothering us, sometimes we got to back down on that force. So that's where doing something like this is wonderful. And that's a nice starting point, and then gradually we get it moving more and more. It's tough to generalize, injuries, but that's just a good starting point in general for when we have shoulder issues. So I'm Thomas Hunt, physical therapist over at Aspire Rehab Center. Got shoulder issues? Come in. Let's talk about it. Let's figure that out. Let's make you better. Cool. Have a good one. Bye.